Hi everyone, welcome back to my sewing studio. Today we are going to talk about smocking and specifically about backsmocking. So I've received a number of questions from some of my customers about backsmocking, what it is, why you do it, where you do it, when you do it. We are going to cover all of that today. But first, let me introduce myself. If you are new here, my name is Lisa. I am the owner and designer behind Pink Holly Bush Patterns, a line of sewing patterns for children's garments, most of which include an option for smocking, most of which are designed for knits. So today we are talking smocking and backsmocking. Okay, so first of all, what is backsmocking? Well, here is Pink Holly Bush pattern. This is the honey pattern, and here you can see the front of the garment is smocked. So backsmocking would literally be when on the back you stitch a line of smocking. You're probably thinking, why? Why on earth would we want to do that? Well, let me show you. Here is a pleated insert. Remember, smocking is embroidery over pleated fabric. You have to start out with pleated fabric that is pleated on a pleater, and hopefully you can see the pleating threads in there. Those are what form the pleats, and they are what is holding all of the pleats in place right now before I do the smocking. Once I do the smocking, I take those pleating threads out, okay? And that's when you then have this. Well, essentially what that means is in order to hold the pleats once the garment is constructed and as you're wearing it, there needs to be smocking essentially on every row where one of those pleating threads was, okay? Otherwise, the first time this is washed, the pleats that don't have any smocking holding it will come out. They won't hold that nice shape. Now, where you normally see this on here, there's no backsmocking because there's plenty of smocking on the front of the garment, so you don't need it. But where you often will see it is what's known as picture smocking. Okay, so this is Mama and Little Giraffe, a smocking plate by Pink Holly Bush. And you can see all this negative area here. Okay, all of these, this is all, the pleats are there, right? But there's no smocking on the front. There is backsmocking in all these areas to hold the pleats in place and to create this negative space. Let you have this white space on the front. Okay, now unfortunately I can't show you the backsmocking because this is a Johnny and it is completely lined, so you cannot see it, but there is backsmocking to hold all of those pleats in place. Now, it doesn't have to be a picture smock design. That is where you see it most often, but for example, on this May Garden dress, if you see these little windows here in the design, each of these windows is backsmocked behind there. Otherwise, again, when this is washed, those pleats would go a little wonky. And I'm going to try and show it to you on here, but we do backsmocking in the same color as the base fabric because we don't want it to show through on the front. And so it's done in that same cream. I don't know if you can see it, but there are stitches right across here for each of those windows to hold those pleats in place. Okay, so that's kind of guidance about where you would do it. A pattern should always tell you where you should backsmock. That is the responsibility of the pattern designer, the person who designs the smocking plate, to figure out where that needs to happen. And so you should have guidance for that in the pattern that tells you where to do it. However, how do you do it? Well, as I mentioned, your going to do on the back of the fabric, it is done with a floss color that matches the base of the fabric. It's usually only 2 strands of floss, and typically you are doing the cable stitch. You can also do the outline or the stem stitch if you prefer to stitch those. It makes no difference. You're not going to see it, right? The purpose is just to hold those pleats in place going forward so you don't lose that. Okay, so do you backsmock first or do you stitch the front first and then backsmock? Well, you can do it either way, and there are pros and cons to both. So let's go over what those are. The advantage of backsmocking first is that it sets all of your pleats, okay? So if you backsmock all of this, your pleats are now set, and that helps you. They're not kind of wobbling around on you when you go to picture smock the front of the design. The negative of backsmocking first is that often when you do go to then picture smock the front, is it's easy to catch the backsmocked threads and they get pulled to the front, and then that can be hard to try to get it undone. Okay. The second disadvantage of backsmocking first is that you have to backsmock the whole thing. So for example, on this design with Mama and Baby Giraffe, I backsmocked it afterwards. And so like you see this area up here with the tree, I didn't backsmock across that. I backsmocked up to the tree, and then I backsmocked over here. Same thing across the bodies of the giraffe, where I have large cable stitches on the front. Once the front is backsmocked, once the front is smocked with the design, I can see that on the back, and I just skip that part. So it reduces the amount of backsmocking that you have to do. So what do I do? Well, I kind of take a hybrid approach, okay? So it is nice to have those pleats set. And so the first thing I will stitch on a picture smock design are the rows that help set the pleats from the front. So for example, with this little one, Mama and Baby Giraffe, I stitched the grass first, okay? And then I backsmocked up here, this very top row. So that helps set the pleats for me in between without having threads that were then in my way. Likewise, let me show you, this is Little Whale, also by Pink Hollybush. With this one, the first thing that I stitched was the water here. And then again, I stitched on the back, the row up here. That helps sets the pleats to do the boat and the whale in between, but I'm not dealing with those threads. Okay, and then again, as I mentioned before, I wouldn't have bothered backsmocking across the whale or the boat, right? I would have just done the area that is around it. One last tip or hint for backsmocking. People can feel it's tedious, right? You don't get the fun of the design, seeing the design as you're doing it, and there can be quite a bit to do. I tend to do 2 things to help with that. First of all, when you're backsmocking, it's kind of a mindless thing. You can have the television on, you can be listening to a podcast, you can be having a conversation with someone. You don't really have to focus on your stitches and getting that nice plump stitch like you have to on the front. You're just trying to quickly go along, take those stitches, and just take that very shallow bite so it doesn't show on the front. And so it's something kind of mindless, and you can be doing other things. So that really helps me get through my backsmocking. The other thing is I tend to backsmock as I'm going along. So once I have an area that's completely done, I'll do some of the back smocking so we don't have it all left to the end, right? So for example, I talk up here, you know, I told you I did these, the water, and then I did this top to help set my plates. You know, I then did little whale. Well, then I back smocked this section. So it was done. Then maybe I do the ship and the sun, and then I back smocked around there. You get how that kind of works. So you don't have to wait till like all of a sudden you finish the fun part and the design is done, but you haven't, you know, gotten any of the back smocking done, and now you have to get it done. So going and doing it piecemeal really is something that helps me. It just doesn't seem like that much then. I hope that you've enjoyed this explanation of back smocking, and it's helped to make things clear for you on when you do it, when you don't. If you would like some more help with your smocking, I have a couple resources for you that you might want to check out. The first is my Get Started Smocking free email series. I will link that to that below. I also have a new and revised and expanded Learn to Smock course. So if you would like some help smocking your first garment, or you can also use it to smock an ornament as we're getting closer to the holidays here, I will put the link to that as well. Check that out, and I hope that you will give smocking a try. Happy smocking!